What's going on YouTube? Ryan Alex back with Dopemon again. And today we are going to talk about John Klingberg and the rumors that he will be traded out of Dallas. Um, we think this is more to do with his contract status than anything. Rumor has it he wants, what was it, 8 by 8?
Yeah, 8 years, somewhere in the 62 to 66 million for over 8 years, which is averaging at 8 million a year.
Yeah, so he wants to get paid. Currently is on the final year of a $4.2 million contract for the last 7 years. So for the last 7 years, he's been one of the better, higher valued contracts as far as defensemen go. He's 29 years old, and an 8-year contract would put him well into his 30s. So we're gonna go through some cap-friendly deals of what people are saying, what people are rumoring to happen, and like we've done for a couple other people on this channel, we did an Evander Kane video, we did a Taylor Hall video way back. What was the other one we did?
DeBrusque.
DeBrusque, that's right. So yeah, we're just gonna go through. It's not having a great. I mean, 17 points in 27 games isn't terrible, but the last few years he hasn't been outstanding. He hasn't been the 67-point defenseman from 17-18. But everything we've seen, and we'll start with the first one here, Alex.
Yeah, on that, he hasn't really thrived under Rick Bowness, and I think that's a huge part of the contract negotiations. Just hasn't played as well as he has in the past. Maybe, he deserved that kind of money then, but not so much now. And Dallas seems to be in a kind of rebuild, maybe retool kind of state. And so there's a bunch of options
Yeah,
for him to go. And
Dallas is in a weird kind of pseudo rebuild. They got, Pavelski and Radulov coming off the books. They got Klingberg to deal with, and they got their goaltenders to deal with, and they still have the long ass contracts of Sagan and Ben. So they're in a weird state, Dallas right now. They have to try
mhm.
to hold on while they have these two big anchor contracts and try to remain competitive. But
Yeah, these trades.
these trades, everything I've
It's a
seen,
5 year.
yeah, we have five different teams, and they all have one thing in common. It's essentially top prospect, player, first round pick, right? It's one of the top prospects in each of these organizations, a first round pick, depending on how much money is retained, and a defenseman going back the other way. Some of these trades are better than others. We're going to discuss them here. Let us know what you think before we get into it. What you think Klingberg is going to go for, if he's going to go at all, if he's going to resign in Dallas. They do have Miro Heiskanen signed to a long-term deal at 8.4. Lindell at 5.8. So having Klingberg also up there with these big contracts, it might put a little bit of a strain on them going forward. So maybe the best play is to trade him. What would you do? What would you do, Alex?
I like some of the offers on the board here. My favorite, top of the top right there, Tampa Bay, who has tried to make it work with David Savard last year. And I think that what they'd be offering up here is a lot. Uh, Tampa can't be, doing that, expecting to stay, to be giving up prospects and draft picks forever. But Klingberg is a guy who, on the right team, can put up 60 points, as a rental. It's a little bit of a steep price to pay for Tampa, especially if they don't go deep. But he's also a guy that could be a huge force in the playoffs, huge force to end the season, and if he can put up those numbers, uh, be that kind of guy for them who they've kind of needed this year. I feel like Hedman hasn't been the Norris kind of the winner that he has consistently, and that they could use another D.
I don't know. He's leading the league in points by defenseman, I think, Hedman. So
Still,
at least he's
there's
top
been
few.
times I've watched him defensively. It's been a little defensively. There's just something I've watched that they need a little bit more, and I feel like another D that would secure that right side because Tampa does not have a strong right side right now.
Yeah, that's more the thing for me is if they do get a guy like Klingberg, is they're putting him in a top pairing or top four role right away because the right side isn't as deep as their left. They got Hedman, McDonough, and Sergachev on the left. I know Sergachev sometimes does play the right side, but they could make their decor a little bit more stable on both sides. But This is
Of
Tampa,
course,
so
Chernak and Ruta were also part of that. Or no, Ruta was part of that deal. So
yeah, Ruta going the
giving
other
up
way.
that right shot D to move, to improve on the defensive side. I think that's a gamble that could work. I feel like it could, really solidify Tampa defensively and make it easier for Hedman to be a number one kind of D. And I like it. I just like that one.
Yeah, all of these trades are, I think, the same to me. I think the Edmonton trade is, I think, the least likely team to go get John Klingberg is Edmonton in this group. I could see it from Washington. He is really good again this year and wants to be competitive still while Ovi and Backstrom and all their guys are still there. Giving a guy up like Hendricks Lapierre in a first might not be a bad play for Washington. Edmonton, like how many times are they going to throw darts at the board trying to get a defenseman on that team to carry their offense? So I don't know if that's the play for them, especially including a guy like Yamamoto in a first. Who knows where Edmonton's going to land in the standings this year with them, struggling recently. That first could end up
Hmm.
being quite valuable. So we, in
Could
a
be a
draft
lottery
that's
pick.
very, very good. So I don't think Edmonton should do it. I don't think Toronto should do it. I am more on the lines of the Washington Capitals as far as these five, similar trades are concerned.
But speaking of Toronto, you do like a particular Toronto deal, don't you?
Yes. There's this one here. And this one is so funny to me because it's just so insane that it might work. It's so crazy. And I don't know exactly how the money works. I think whoever did this has made it so, the cap change isn't that crazy. I think it's, you know, the change
Two
is
hundred thousand dollars. Yeah, that's not a
very,
lot.
very minimal. What this person is essentially doing here, Truber73, is Klingberg at almost half retained. Braden Holtby for Peter Mrazek, essentially. One for one, but Mrazek has term, Holtby doesn't, and he's older. And Joe Pavelski, who is the other guy on a expiring deal this year, at $7 million for one more this season for Ritchie, Mrazek, Hall, Kerfoot, Robertson, and a first. A lot of assets to give up, but nobody that is so important to the team. I think it'll hurt them. The only guy on here that I'm like, is Kerfoot because I don't want to give up Robertson either, but in a trade where you're getting all three of these big assets and you want to go on another run, you got to give up a prospect in there too.
Hmm.
Um, and then
And
I
to
guess
really fill out
Hall
the
and
top
Ritchie
four.
for money, right? Um, the other thing about Kerfoot is Kerfoot plays on the left side, and Toronto's a little bit weaker on the left side. Pavelski's a right winger, I believe, and a centerman, so he'd be either playing on his off wing or like the third line right wing spot, and then bump Kasha somewhere. So like, it's an interesting thought to like do something like this for Toronto, to essentially give them a bunch of players that are less important in their lineup. Guys like Nick Ritchie, who was recently waived. Guys like Justin Hall, who Leafs Nation is a little bit down on. Guys like Peter Mrazek, who hasn't played this year and is on a almost $4 million contract for the next few years. For a guy who performs really well in the playoffs, veteran backup goaltending, and John Klingberg. I mean, all of these guys are expiring, I think. So this is a super super big rental play from this hypothetical for Toronto, but I don't hate it. This is a very NHL 22 trade, but I do think it's still kind of funny. What do you think?
I like the P. You get the first round pick, but you kind of know that it's gonna be a late one. And I like Robertson, I like Kerfoot. They're guys that Dallas could really retool around. Robertson isn't far off from reaching, the NHL. Kerfoot is well within his prime. Could really turn around. Maybe even keep Hall or Richie Mrazek. But I don't know if I like this trade too much. there's something that's maybe like too many moving pieces, and it's like, it's yeah, like you said, it seems like an EA
Oh yeah, it's
kind
definitely
of
a
Dopemon.
video
Yeah,
game
right.
move.
Yeah,
And
one of those.
I like getting rid of Mrazek for Holtby, I think, the most. If anything, take out Pavelski, Kerfoot, and whoever you need to make the money work for that, and then
Hmm.
just for Klingberg at half retained and Braden Holtby for Mrazek, Hall, Robertson in a first or something, or a lesser prospect in a first since they're rentals. I don't know. I think there's I don't. I'm not a huge fan of Peter Mrazek. I wasn't a huge fan of Peter Mrazek before he got traded to
Me
Toronto.
neither.
Um, and he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't been good when he's been in. Um, so getting rid of his cap hit, I think, is really tempting to me for a team that doesn't need goaltending. But if you go forward with Mrazek and Ottinger, if you're Dallas, that's not terrible, right? If they can get someone to take Anton Hudolbin in the next little bit, because he's been
Hmm.
pretty bad this year. But yeah, this one is funny to me. I just think there's something here. It's not quite this, but there's something here. Now,
We have another one with a sort of like a Dallas kind of, sale here. Rebuild, full rebuild.
yeah, and I am with this person. Title is Let's Be Honest, Dallas needs to rebuild. They kind of do. they aren't very they aren't prepped for longevity in like a long term sense. They need to get into the playoffs, and if they do, they need to hope that they have enough depth and they can play that style of game that the playoffs works for, like they did a few years ago. That's really their only hope to win a cup. So retooling, whatever you want to call it, air quotes, wouldn't be a
Hmm.
terrible idea, especially with pretty solid assets like Pavelski and Klingberg. Less so Radulov. I don't know about trading Essa Lindell either, but just a couple guys. Be like a conservative seller. I'll say the an EA term again. Be a conservative seller.
Hmm.
Trade for picks and guys you can kind of retool this team around, and then maybe in a few years you're still competitive. But yeah, what do you think about any of these?
You
Main
know
one
what?
here is Klingberg to Winnipeg, obviously.
Yeah, I
So
really like that one. I think that there might be something to Winnipeg. I feel like they've wanted to solidify that right side, and he's a guy who could. Vassilainen is a prospect who really hasn't worked in Winnipeg, but still has, a kind of ceiling that I feel like Dallas could, work. Another Finn as well, right?
mm,
And then in Dallas, I think that'd be pretty cool. And that first round pick, like that's what you're asking for, like a first round pick and a prospect, one maybe roster piece, but that's what Winnipeg's offering, like a third here. I think there's something to that trade. I like that one. And I do agree with, Radulov and Pavelski just getting what you can for them, getting picks.
yeah,
That's,
like if they can
turn
go
them
to
into assets.
if they can go to Calgary and get a second and a fourth,
Yeah.
I mean, why not? They're never gonna get that because Radulov
No,
has
no.
been hurt and
Yeah, this
he
person
has
wasn't
he's
very
not.
specific about the return, just second, fourth, second, fourth, second. But he
Yeah,
was very kind of just, it is kind of like get
yeah.
what you can.
If they can get anything for him, I don't know if he has a no trade or something on him. He has a full no move clause. So does Joe Pavel. Or he has Pavelski has a modified. Player submits a 3-team
Three.
trade list. So
Wow.
Pavelski and like they'd all have to give permission for them to do this. If they, that's the problem with no trade clauses. But if they can convince them to, hey, we're not contending. Do you want to go try to win a cup somewhere? You know, for oops, that's the wrong one.
I
For
feel
a
like they
team,
all would.
yeah, Calgary could be in the hunt. Rangers could be in the hunt. They could want to do it. Joe Pavelski might okay that. But yeah, moving on to
I
another
don't like
one.
the Faxa one. I think they should keep Radek Faxa though. I like him.
Yeah, Faxa and Essa Lindell I wouldn't do, especially for Richard Panik at a first. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Essa Lindell, a very Islanders defenseman though. I would do that if I was New York. There's another one.
Another rebuild.
Yeah, another kind of rebuild. Andre Sekera, John Klingberg to Minnesota. I don't I don't know if Minnesota needs another big contract to deal with potentially next year if they want to resign him. Holtby to Edmonton, I like that if they're able to take Koskinen back, and get a prospect for that. Edmonton needs goaltending, and if they want to go with the old man Holtby Smith combo, that wouldn't be terrible. This one has Toronto, Pavelski, and Joel Hanley. I don't mind Joel Hanley. He's a solid player. He was on Team Canada's juniors a few years ago, if I remember correctly. Kerfoot, Liljegren in the first. I wouldn't do this, right? 1 year
That's
of
a lot to give up.
that's a lot to give up for 1 year of Joe Pavelski and a bottom part of your lineup piece at best. Uh, Liljegren Hanley, I think, is more of a lateral move, and Kerfoot and Liljegren, or Kerfoot in a first, isn't worth half a team Joe Pavelski, in my opinion. Um, and this one
Yeah, take
has
out the first,
Radulov.
and I'd maybe, start like having some negotiations, but it's a little bit much with that first round pick in there.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. A little bit too much.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is another one of those. Dallas gives up everything to kind of half rebuild. And our last one here is one that is not going to a team that is in contention, but to a team that just might do something like this if they're involved in possibly a sign-in trade. I know you wanted to talk about the value of that, and you know, Stevie Y is the kind of guy to pull off something crazy like this. You're a Swedish defenseman in Detroit. That's where they go.
Yeah, the sign and trade, as you mentioned, historically, if you're getting a rental, yeah, the trade value is generally a little bit less. But if you trade a guy who gets signed, and that's usually pretty well understood between teams. When that's happening, the players in discussion making that deal before the trade even kind of happens. Then uh, there's a lot more trade value involved. So when we're looking at all of these, we talk about the value of them being a sign-in trade being, a first, a second, a third, or a first prospect and a roster player, and but versus his value as a rental. And we're talking about his value just as a pure rental. Uh, you know, how does that compare? And I don't think he's worth as much just as a rental for 1 year. I don't think I'd play. Teams would be willing to give up that much.
No, I wouldn't. Not for a guy like Klingberg. If you need an offensive defenseman, you need a guy to run your power play, and you need a jolt to your defensive lineup in on offense. Then John Klingberg's your guy. But John Klingberg is not a defenseman that plays very well in his own end, in my opinion. He's okay. He's not a defensive guy. That's not his game. His game is offense. And a lot of teams that are competitive right now have that guy already. And Klingberg, I don't think is the guy to patch into your lineup, giving up a prospect and a first round pick to go get. I think there are other guys that you could get on a rental that would be cheaper and honestly a better fit in your lineup. We go back to all these deals in the front. I don't know if John Klingberg is worth this for me. I don't know about you, but
No,
I don't value him as high as people seem to be valuing him. We'll see what happens.
no. So speaking of that, where his contract is about to expire, what are we gonna sign him for? What are you offering? What do you think? He wants 8 years, $8 million. I think that the money's crazy. I don't even. I think he's barely worth 8 million now. So to be like, yeah, in 8 years from now, when you're 37, you'll be worth $8 million again. Like I think that's ridiculous. But maybe on a 2-year deal, he can kind of ask for seven.
Yeah,
3-year deal, six.
I don't know whether this is the thing we don't know. We don't know whether the sticking point for Klingberg on his contract is term or money or both. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what Dallas is offering. If they've offered him 8 by 8, I assume he would have taken it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so they're either way down on both, or maybe they've said, "Hey, we'll give you 8 years, but only on, or $8 million, but only on a 2 year deal." Well, for Klingberg, that might not be good enough. We'll see. I don't know. I wouldn't give him 8x8. I wouldn't even give him. I wouldn't give him an 8-year deal, honestly.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling that they're trying to offer him about 5.5 for 5, maybe 5 for 5.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I'd be more in the middle for both of those sides. If I have to go higher on one of them, I always, tend to want to think that I would overspend rather than over 10 like contract years.
Hmm.
So if I have to give him $7-8 million, I'm kind of maxing out at 3 years, especially for a guy like Klingberg. But if I was Dallas, I would do exactly what is rumored. I would try to get as much as I could for him because I don't really want to sign him to that kind of money anyway, especially in a team that's going to be struggling a little bit for some cap relief. Can use it elsewhere. They got Miro Heiskanen on that team who can be
Hmm.
the number one D for the next few years. I think they got him initially to replace Klingberg. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anything else you want to add before we cut this off?
No, that is all. We talked about everything, and I think that maybe there's an actual trade speculation because it's gonna happen, right? It is he Dallas just can't not trade him. So, do you have like a prediction on what that trade will be?
I think it'll be close to what people are describing here. I just don't think it'll be as much. I heard something they wanted like an Eichel-esque return. I don't know if that's
Yeah, okay.
that's gonna happen. Eichel was, is a center rather than a D and is on a longer term contract. I don't think that's what is gonna happen at all. I think it'll be like a B level prospect and a first, or an A level prospect and a mid round pick. I don't think it'll be both,
I
personally.
like the Winnipeg one with Vassalainen and the first. I think that could be. I like that one. I think that's what it's gonna be. That's like I have a feeling that'll be a
Something closer to that, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
all right. That's all for me.
Yeah, let us know what you think if you made it this far in the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy it, please leave a like. Subscribe to the channel for more dope hockey content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.